Well, good afternoon, everyone. Today we have Senator Damon Thayer with us, who not only has been leading a lot of efforts throughout the entire Commonwealth, but has represented Kenton County, parts of Kenton County for a long time, and just does amazing work. So, Senator, thanks for the time today. I know even out of session, you're very busy.
Great to be with you, Judge. Thank you for the invitation. And as you noted, I do represent the southern two-thirds land-wise of Kenton County, which has about a third of the population, about 50,000 people. Taylor Mill, Independence, Southern Kenton County, Pioneer, Fiskburg, Morningview, Nicholson, Visalia, one precinct in Ryland, one precinct in South Covington. Of course, the rest of Kenton County, the northern one-third with two-thirds of the people represented by Senator Kris Knochelmann. And then I also represent Grant and Scott counties as well.
Well, and all the while, you work vigorously on behalf of all of us. Appreciate that. And, you know, nothing more like this crazy pandemic that has affected the world and the Commonwealth. And then you've wrapped up a state budget session. Maybe you could just kind of let us in on the particulars of this session, any insight that the residents need to hear about.
Well, we were hit with the virus pandemic right during the most critical part of the legislative session, during the last couple of weeks where we're finishing up budget talks, the road plan, any important bills. Everything seems to kind of come down into a funnel at the end with everything trying to get through in those last few days. And we ended up taking some pretty extraordinary steps. We cut the session from 60 days down to 53 days. We made the decision because of the unknown financial situation in terms of the state budget to only pass a one-year budget, and that's unprecedented. So the new one-year budget was under the leadership of Senator Kris Knochelmann was passed for just 1 year beginning on July 1, and we passed it using the most pessimistic revenue forecast. And even with that, it's still hard to tell at this point what the high unemployment numbers and the economic pause and lockdown did to the budget. We know that it's probably going to be between $350 to $400 million shortfall just in this fiscal year that ends on June 30th, and it could be even more. So we're hoping for a rapid economic recovery as we come out of this lockdown, because we're an income and sales tax state. Most of our revenues are based on income and sales taxes, and obviously with nearly 40% of Kentuckians on unemployment, we're going to see huge downturns in that money coming into state government.
And you've been an advocate, Senator, even just in recent days, to make sure that we're trying to get the economy open back up in a safe way, to make sure that we don't win unless we have a growing economy. And you've been working on that for a long time. Any insights in that area that you'd like the residents to know about?
I started calling for a gradual re-engagement in the economy about 6 weeks ago, and I continue to believe we are not opening up fast enough. Our surrounding states are way ahead of us. Our numbers are good. We flattened the curve. We never came close to reaching capacity in our hospitals, and I think the worst is behind us. And while keeping in mind the safety and health requirements of re-engaging the economy, we've got to get this back open. The economic consequences are severe, and the economic downturn causes stress and anxiety and tension for people who are sheltering in place and following these stay-at-home orders. And I'm very concerned about the effects on crime and suicide and domestic violence and homelessness and childhood hunger. All of these things are real human costs to this economic downturn caused by the stay-at-home orders. So I continue to call for a faster opening. I'm very disappointed that the governor's only allowing restaurants to open up at 33% capacity. Our surrounding states, when they reopened, they went to 50% capacity, and some of them will be at 100% capacity next week. And of course, we need to follow the health and safety guidelines set out by the CDC. There's a responsible way to re-engage in this economy, and I believe Kentuckians can do this. I think the elderly and the sick and those with underlying conditions will continue to quarantine at home.
Sure.
And I think people who are not in those categories can then re-engage at their own pace. We're Kentuckians, we're Americans. We can figure out what we are comfortable with in terms of our level of re-engaging in the economy.
Well, and while that was happening a week or two ago, I saw some of the, with the delay of Churchill Downs, I saw some delivery of some of the horses coming back to Churchill. And I know that that's you hold a lot of that effort of our economy to close to your heart. And you had to have been thrilled to see that opening back up.
I am, and I want to give the governor credit. We are opening up horse racing faster than our surrounding states in Ohio and Indiana, and I think that's appropriate. There were 5 states that horse racing did not pause: California, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arkansas, and Florida. They went to following health and safety guidelines, no spectators, and we've proven that we can do it now with Churchill Downs opening up last week. The horse industry in Kentucky supports 80,000 jobs and it has a $3 billion economic impact. So I was glad to see Churchill Downs open up last week with no spectators. The money wagered on advanced deposit wagering apps on your phone or your device or your computer was up 183% from last year. So I think that goes to show you that Kentucky's horse racing product is well received by racing and sports fans across the country. It's televised live on multiple networks because there's not a lot of other live sports content out there. NASCAR is back, which is great news. We're certainly looking forward to NASCAR's return to Kentucky Speedway in July. All of these aspects of our economy play important roles in getting people back to work. But I also think I agree with Senator McConnell. We need sports in this country. It's a part of our psyche. It's a part of who we are, and we follow sports. And I think it'll help us get back to normal more quickly. The quicker we can get back to having live sports on TV, and then when we can start gradually re-engaging spectators on site.
Well, Senator, if there was one thing as we're coming out of this, and I think a lot of us are just grateful that we didn't hit the numbers in the COVID pandemic that were estimated. If there was one thing you think, hey, I wish the residents of Northern Kentucky would know about what happened in the legislature, or what maybe we're looking at in the next couple of weeks, couple of months, what would you like to point out to us?
I think it's important that the citizens of Northern Kentucky understand that the legislature stayed in session because we had to adjourn at a date certain in the Constitution on April 15th. And we stayed in session and passed the one-year budget to ensure that state government doesn't shut down on July 1. That would have been calamitous, I believe. We did so while following the CDC protocols. We sent home much of our staff. We operated on a skeleton staff. We didn't allow guests or visitors or pages or interns or lobbyists into the state capitol. And we had one case, one employee was sick, and he immediately started sheltering in place, and he's fully recovered. We had no other cases of coronavirus here in the Capitol in Frankfort. And I think it's important that people know that we did the people's work to make sure that state government does not shut down on July 1st. And we continue to look at what the response has been. We start our interim committee hearings in June, and all these committee meetings are going to be looking at the COVID-19 situation, how we dealt with it, how we can deal with it going forward. People were surprised to know that the legislature basically is powerless when it's not in session, and the governor can do whatever he wants, especially once he declares a state of emergency. So we're going to look at potentially passing a constitutional amendment that would allow the legislature to call itself back into the special session. We're also going to look at potentially limiting the number of days a governor can call a state of emergency. And it might be 30 days or 45 days or 60 days, or it might be 15 days. But then the governor will have to, we're going to look at a law that limits the number of days, and then the governor would have to communicate with the legislature and get legislative approval in a special session in terms of extending more of those days. I've been disappointed on the governor's lack of communication with the legislature. We haven't had any official communication with them since March 12th. And we're the branch of government closest to the people. And we need to look at changing the laws during a state of emergency to make sure that the people's branch of government, the General Assembly, is heard, because we're hearing from our constituents about their concerns, and the governor should take that into account.
Indeed. Well, I know one thing, you've consistently worked on behalf of the entire state, always been very thoughtful, and not to mention, you just referred to the fact that down deep, you have faith in Kentuckians to do the right thing and make the best decisions for them, their businesses and families. With that, are there any last comments you'd like to make?
Just that I really appreciate you doing this. It's, you know, with the governor having his press conferences every day at 5 o'clock, it's hard for legislators to kind of rise above the din and the noise surrounding the governor's report every day at 5 o'clock. So I've been doing media interviews, podcasts, Zoom calls like this, social media, to try to communicate with my constituents about the things we've talked about on this call, about the response, about why, according to our Constitution, the legislature can't have more input into the situation, and the things we're doing to potentially change that in the future. The COVID virus has shed a light on a lot of things that need to be changed in Kentucky government, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to communicate with the citizens of Kentucky about these matters.
You bet. Thanks for all the hard work you do, and I know we'll be here when you need us, and as you've always been there when we've needed you. So thank you, Senator.
Thanks, Judge Knochelmann. Keep up the great work.